So now let's look at a new term called effective nuclear charge. Now this term makes it easier to collectively talk about nuclear charge and shielding effect, because what effective nuclear charge is supposed to represent is the net nuclear charge, or the effective nuclear charge is basically the net nuclear charge the outermost electron will feel after accounting for shielding effect. So because the inner shells shield the outermost electron, so the nuclear charge that the outermost electron, yeah, 1 second, hey, so today we're going to talk about effective nuclear charge. Effective nuclear charge is our way of quantifying the net effect of the nuclear charge after counting for the shielding effect. Basically, and I'm going to use some examples across hydrogen, helium, lithium and period 2 elements to make you understand what I mean by effective nuclear charge. It helps us to quantify the net resultant force on an electron after counting for the shielding effect. Now, for example, if I start off with hydrogen and helium. Now, hydrogen has 1 proton and its outermost electron is 1. Helium has 2 protons and has 2 outermost electrons. Now, if I wanted to talk about the shells and draw the hydrogen electrons and then draw the helium. So now here I've got 2 circles that's supposed to represent the hydrogen and helium atom. Hydrogen atom has 1 plus charge, helium atom has 2 plus charge. Hydrogen has 1 electron, helium has 2 electrons, right? And I'm going to draw them right there if that you guys can see. Now, so basically the electron, the force of attraction that the electron on hydrogen feels is from a 1 plus. The force of attraction each electron feels from the helium nucleus is 2 plus in helium. And the electrons are going to repel each other, but electrons in the same subshell hardly repel each other. So when there is no shielding, the effective nuclear charge is the nuclear charge. Now we use this symbol ZeF to represent effective nuclear charge. So in hydrogen the effective nuclear charge is 1. In helium it's approximately 2 plus. It's 2 plus but a little bit of repulsion. Now it might not make much sense unless I bring in the third guy. The third guy being lithium. So if I bring in lithium right here, lithium has 2 shells. So if I draw its shells right now, 1 second, yeah. So for lithium, I'll erase this. This is 1 shell. For the sake of argument, this is lithium's second shell. It's not exactly a perfect circle, but let's call it that. And it's a 3 plus nucleus. And the outer electrons attraction from the nucleus is by the 3 plus nucleus, but the moment it passes through the first shell, its attraction decreases. So you could effectively say that because the 3 plus is being shielded a lot by the inner shell electrons. Remember, the inner shell electrons cause a lot more shielding than the electrons in the same shell. In lithium, even though it's a 3 plus charge, the electrons in the 2s are being shielded by the 1s electrons. The repulsion is very strong. When there is repulsion from inner shells, that is much stronger. So for lithium, the approximate effective nuclear charge we come across is that it's supposed to, the nucleus charge is 3, but we've got to subtract the inner shell electrons to get an approximate nuclear charge of 1 plus. So the effective nuclear charge in lithium becomes 1 plus. We have come up with a formula that is an approximation, but it works for us to understand this, where the effective nuclear charge can be considered the nuclear charge minus the number of total inner shell electrons. Now This is for lithium. But the idea being that, okay, yes, the electron in lithium is even further away. But remember, there were three factors: nuclear charge, shielding effect, and the distance. But Z effective can combine two of the three factors into nuclear charge and shielding effect. So the force that the outermost electron will feel can be combined into two terms now: effective nuclear charge and distance. So the effective nuclear charge that the electron in hydrogen is feeling is the same as the effective nuclear charge in lithium. But lithium's electron is further away than hydrogen's, which means that if I were to talk about the forces, let's call it Fa, the force needed to remove the electron, or the energy needed to remove the electron in Fa, B, or C, the weakest attraction is Fc. So the easiest to remove is Fc because it is the same as hydrogen. They both are 1 plus attraction, while the effective charge in helium is 2 plus. But between the two 1 pluses, lithium's electron is further away. So effective nuclear charge is a way to incorporate the shielding effect into the attractive forces, so you get a net attractive force. So effective nuclear charge can be thought of as that, a net attractive force. If I talk about other elements in period 2, which might help you solidify this idea, for lithium, for example, let's start with the hydrogen and helium we did first. So we knew the number of protons were 1 plus and 2 plus. So let's call it nuclear charge. And the effective nuclear charge was, because that came from the, So you got electrons, and then you have effective nuclear charge. So in hydrogen, the inner shell electrons, because electrons are 1, it's the 2 for lithium, total electrons. For lithium, beryllium, lithium is 3 plus, beryllium is 4 plus, boron is 5 plus, the nuclear charge, right? And carbon is 6 plus, nitrogen is 7 plus, oxygen is 8 plus, fluorine is 9 plus, and neon is 10 plus. And the configurations becomes 2 1, 2 2, 2 3, 2 4. I'm giving in terms of shells, so that makes it easier to read and see.
Quick pause. If you're finding value in this explanation, there's so much more to discover at Alt Academy, where we break down every A-level concept with the same clarity. Now back to the video lesson.
And the idea is that it's only the inner shell electrons that will shield something. So the ones I'm highlighting are the only electrons that will shield the outermost electron in each atom, which means the effective nuclear charge in hydrogen is approximately 1 plus, in helium is 2 plus, in lithium is 1 plus, in beryllium is 2 plus, in boron is 5 minus 3, 2 plus, 5 minus 2, 3 plus, 4 plus, 5 plus, 6 plus, 7 plus, 8 plus. But the next fellow is sodium, who's got 11 plus charges, but configuration is 281, which means that the inner shell electrons are 10. So for sodium, the effective nuclear charge is 11 minus 10, 1 plus. So what you will see is that across a period, effective nuclear charge will increase, but again, it decreases when you go to the next group because the inner shell electrons increase. Like period 2 is being shielded by the first shell, period 3 is being shielded by the second and first shell. Now it would be incorrect for me to just say, okay, this is the exact effective nuclear charge. It is approximately, because for effective nuclear charge, we're only considering the shielding of the inner shell electrons. But we need to realize that the outer shell somewhat also shields. But since we can't quantify it, I have not put in that formula. But if you look at the idea of effective nuclear charge and shielding effect, then mathematically not, quantifiably not, but qualitatively, even across these guys, the shielding effect is going to increase slightly. But it doesn't increase by as much as the nuclear charge is increasing by. So we say the effective nuclear charge is definitely increasing. We really only talk about it qualitatively and not quantitatively. This diagram that I've given in the notes, it's similar to that across period 2, going from lithium to beryllium to neon, you are going from basically 3 plus all the way to 10 plus. So your nuclear charge is increasing. But the shielding force is not really constant. It's slightly increasing, if you notice. And because even though the shells remain the same, the inner shell for all of these guys, the inner shell electrons, for all of these are 2, from the 1s, but their shielding is still increasing because the outermost shell electrons are increasing. So qualitatively, in the long run, it will be incorrect. So to say the shielding remains the same, you could say that shielding only increases slightly, but it's best to say shielding almost remains constant, technically speaking. So that helps us to answer this, to understand, sorry. So the math that I used is the effective nuclear charge, where I use the nuclear charge minus the number of inner shells, electrons, is approximate. It's an approximate calculation to help us to understand the idea, because the idea is more important than the exact math, because this is chemistry and not math. Anyways, let's look at period 3. Period 3 is sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine and argon. And what's happening is that the nuclear charge is increasing from 11 plus all the way to 18 plus. And the inner shell electrons for all of these guys are 10 only. So you could say that the effective nuclear charge is going to increase from 1, because 10 minus 12, 11 minus 10 is 1, 2. So basically the effective nuclear charge here is 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus, 4 plus, 5 plus, 6 plus, 7 plus, 8 plus. Here you could see that I have highlighted the inner shell. So for sodium to argon, what we're talking about is what does the force of attraction this outermost electron feels. For sodium, it's 11 plus having to go through 2 layers of shells. For 18 plus, it also has to go through the same number of shells. So the inner shells remain the same across the period, but the proton number or the nuclear charge increases. So if I look at the same example for chlorine to sodium and chlorine, sodium is basically the outermost electron is effectively only being pulled by 1 plus. Why? Because it's 11 plus minus 10, because the inner shell electrons shield the outermost electrons. While across the period, as you go from sodium all the way to chlorine, which is element number 11 to element number 17, the force of attraction on the outermost electron increases. And I'm trying to explain to you the physics inside the atom. If you can understand the force of attraction the outermost or valence electrons feel, then we can discuss, will something lose electrons or will something gain electrons. The effect that the nucleus will have on other electrons, it starts sharing. So these ideas are helpful in understanding why ionic bonds happen, what kind of covalent bonds happen, polarity in covalent bonds, intermolecular forces, the strength of intermolecular forces. All of this is determined by how strongly are the outer regions of the electron cloud are feeling the pull of the nucleus. In sodium, the outer regions are only really effectively feeling a charge of 1 plus. The same that's for hydrogen, but hydrogen's electron is much closer than sodium's, because sodium has 3 shells. But across a period, as you go from sodium all the way to chlorine, the number of inner shell electrons remain the same. So you go from 11 plus to 17 plus, and the inner shells are still 10 electrons in the inner shell. So the effective nuclear charge from sodium might be 1 plus, but for chlorine is 7 plus. So the outermost electrons in chlorine are pulled in much more strongly than the outermost electron in sodium. Obviously the size also matters, but we'll talk about the size in a bit. We're just talking about the net force of attraction the outermost electrons will feel after accounting for inner shell shielding. So what you'll realize is that the effective nuclear charge on anything in the same group is going to be exactly the same. We had examples of hydrogen, we saw lithium, and we saw sodium. Even though hydrogen is not considered to be group 1 metal, it's part of the S1 configuration. Hydrogen is 1s1, lithium is 1s2, 2s1, sodium is 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s1. The old configuration is 1, 2, 1, 2, 8, 1. The nuclear charge is 1 plus, 3 plus, and 11 plus. And for safe measure, let's put even potassium. Potassium is 2881. And for all of these, the effective nuclear charge, let's say for hydrogen will be 1 minus internal electrons are 0, inner shell electrons, so it's 1 plus. For lithium, it's 3 nuclear charge, but 2 inner shell electrons, 1 plus. For sodium, what do we have? We've got 11 plus charges, but 10 inner shell electrons. Again, I'll highlight the inner shell electrons. These are the inner shell electrons. 28 for sodium, 288 for potassium. So for the sodium, it comes out to 1 plus. For even potassium, it's 19 minus 18 inner shell electrons, so 1 plus. You'll realize that the effective nuclear charge of the elements in the same group remains the same, which is why in O levels or IGCSE you study that down the group it becomes easier to lose electrons. The reason is because you're told that size increases, so the electrons are further away. You're never told about the nuclear charge because the effective nuclear charge down the group remains the same. So in O levels we just tend to say that we tend to not even highlight the problem, because even though the nuclear charge is increasing down a group, why is it still easier to lose the electrons? Because the effective nuclear charge remains the same, but the atoms get larger. So when I look at this, for example, for lithium, the outer shell electron, for sodium, the outer shell electron, for potassium, all have the same effective nuclear charge, which is 1 plus. So which is why later on when we study ionization energies and we try to remove all 3 electrons, so the force on lithium, the force on sodium, and the force on potassium that will then help us determine the energy required to lose the electrons. Which electron will be the most loosely held amongst the 3? If all 3 have the same effective nuclear charge, then the one that is furthest away from the nucleus will be held the least strongly. So therefore, potassium becomes the easiest to lose and lithium becomes the hardest to lose in a group. So the reason why we're doing such properties, effective nuclear charge, shielding effect and all that, is that we're going to use this to determine the size of atoms and how easily an atom loses electrons. Therefore, how more when an atom pull electrons towards itself. And that's the ideas of ionization energy, atomic radius, ionic radius, and even electronegativity. So this wraps up the idea of effective nuclear charge across a period, down a group. Across a period, effective nuclear charge increases. Down a group, effective nuclear charge remains the same.
Hey there! If you found this A-level chemistry lesson helpful, why don't you head over to our website, altacademy.org, where you can sign up for the full A-level chemistry course. In addition to chemistry, you can sign up for physics, biology, math, or 4 other A-level subjects. Thousands of students have already taken the leap. What are you waiting for?